Welcome to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling, the ESPN for all things comedy, with your hosts, Mark Riccadonna and Richie Byrne. And now, grab a drink and welcome Mark Riccadonna and Richie Byrne.
Folks, welcome to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling. I'm your host, Mark Riccadonna, and with me as always,
Richie Byrne.
And we have a special co-host.
Hey, I'm in the building. It's Tom Madden from Down to the Fells. How are you guys?
Good. Tom and he dressed exactly the same.
No, I'm like a cartoon character. It's always the same outfit.
I'm the only one who brings. I change shirts. I'm the only one. You don't.
I wear the same clothes almost every day.
True.
So
That's true.
I have like 4 outfits. But this one's going to the garbage. I just tore it on a door.
Yeah, that's a nice shirt. I like it.
Yeah, so that'll
Anyway.
be that. But anyhow,
Special show.
We have a very special show, and
Special
we have a very
co-host.
special. We have a
Special.
co-host. We got a special guest coming in. We're very excited for this. What the hell just that? We don't have the VR thing set up,
Yeah,
or else
nobody
you would
saw
have
that.
just saw
Nobody
this
do that.
vaudeville moment. I feel bad. Our guest is wondering what the hell just happened. Somebody walked in and did a very vaudeville, like exit stage left. But we have a very special guest. I met him in Atlanta, and I can't believe he's actually coming on. This is awesome. Folks, Dan Pasternack's here, everybody.
Hey.
Hi, thanks so much, guys. Hey, Big Kahuna, how you doing?
I'm good, sir. How you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for letting these other guys crash.
Yeah, no worries. So how you doing? What's going on?
Oh, not much. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Nothing actually. I think I should rectify that. I probably should.
You should. It's the most important meal of the day.
That is true. That is very true.
I love Dan's only going to talk to Big Kahuna.
So,
I know,
is there
he said
anything?
that.
Is there anything you want me to ask the guys for you?
No, it's all right. If they want to chime in.
Thank you, Dan, for letting me be on my show.
No, don't worry about it, Jimmy.
So we'd love to show some appreciation to Shared Universe, who is letting us use their awesome studio, and our producer,
Coolest
Big
shared
Kahuna,
workspace ever.
who Dan
Yes.
is already better friends with than us. So
Yes,
that's
true. And then we were speaking about breakfast. I was saying maybe we could do a liquid breakfast because this is drinks, jokes, and storytelling.
Well, I know.
So what are we drinking today?
We start every show with a drink. And Dan, I saw you take a sip of something. What are you drinking tonight?
Oh, I'm hitting the hard stuff because it's the evening. This is not ordinary seltzer. This is lemon lime seltzer.
Wow.
There you go. Knocking them
Delivered by the responsible and socially distant people of Peapod, right here in beautiful New Jersey.
Wow.
There you go. I love it. Richie,
Yeah.
what
Well,
are you partaking
I'm not
in?
getting crazy like Dan.
Well, yeah.
I'm just drinking a little bit. We got this from Gemini
Yes.
in
Who
an
was
earlier
on?
show, the great John Lombardi. And it's Johnny Walker Scotch, Game of Thrones limited edition. And
Game of Thrones limited edition. Oh, geez, I wouldn't. I don't finish the bottle; it'll end badly.
Oh my God!
Oh,
It was right there.
it's
That
been
was-
there
that was
all this
awesome.
time.
All this time.
Yeah. Just go right up
Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Can I have a little Peter Dinklage of that? Give me just a short one.
Actually, the bottle is in the shape of Peter Dinklage. So I guess we'll never get Peter Dinklage on the show now.
We wouldn't anyway.
That's true. And what are you drinking?
I am having it's called a 007XX East Coast Double Indian Pale Ale. It's here from the Carton Brewing right here in New Jersey,
Cool.
baby.
Hey,
And
So-
what are you doing, brother? You doing
I'm going
staying with the cider?
cider from the tap.
Tommy's got
I'm
the
not
cider.
classy. I'm cider in a solo cup.
We actually have cider here at the studio in a
Yeah.
in a tap. It's very nice. It's very
Yeah.
nice. So,
We're doing
Cheers.
cheers, everybody.
Cheers
Salute.
As we
Your
have,
health, Big Kahuna.
to your health, Kahuna.
Thank you.
and as we have our drink, the other thing we love to do is tell a joke.
right.
So we're gonna ask Dan if he has a joke for us today.
Hang on a sec. Honey, is Abby in the room? All right. Well, recently I was having a number of exchanges with. Oh, hang on. I'm getting a message. I got a message from Paul Provenza who's saying the StreamYard shit isn't working.
What is wrong with Paul and StreamYard?
I don't understand. He was so mad that we were going to use StreamYard. He goes, it doesn't work. And I go, every other
I'm trying to join you, but the StreamYard is bullshit and it sucks and I give up.
Wow.
I hope he doesn't mean
very
online.
angry.
Hopefully he smokes a joint or something.
Right.
All right. Do you want me to help sort this out or would you like a joke right now?
Oh, we'll go for the joke.
No, we
we'll
want
go for
the joke.
Let's go with the joke.
Yeah,
All
Big
right.
Kahuna will sort it out.
All right. Well, I don't know if you're doing any editing, but if you are, I'll start this clean for you. So I was corresponding extensively with Paul Reiser in the making of this project that Provenza and I have been working on. And we were going back and forth with favorite jokes that involve old Jews. And let's just say there's no shortage of them. So I will give you one of my favorites because this is one that doesn't seem to get passed around as much. And so I'd like to sort of get this one into the rotation, if I may. Little old Jewish lady sitting home. It's late at night. And the phone rings. It's dark. She's got one lone light. She creeps over to the phone. She picks it up. She goes, hello? Guy on the other end of the phone says, oh, baby, I'm going to come over there and I'm going to fuck you and I'll stick my tongue in your ass and I'll lick your pussy and I'm going to jam my cock down your throat. You're going to love every bit of it. Little old lady goes, all this you can tell from just hello?
All right, that's your clean one. Now let's hear the dirty one.
That is so Reiser. I love it.
I'll give you the clean one if you want a clean one.
You can give us as many as you want. That was a great one.
Okay. So 80-year-old Jewish man, barely 5 feet tall, skinny like this, goes in to interview for a job as a lumberjack. Giant, 6'5", Goyish a guy, built like a sequoia, standing there, sees this little old Jewish man, comes up and goes, you understand that we're looking for men to be lumberjacks? Ah, lumberjack schmumberbeck. I've been a lumberjack since before you were born, you little pisher. Goes, oh yeah, so where have you worked? Where have I worked? You ever heard of the Sahara Forest? Says, the Sahara Forest? You mean the Sahara Desert? He goes, sure, now.
So you're talking about doing Jewish jokes. Did you know about the Broadway show, Old Jews Telling?
Yeah, because it started as a like a viral video sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely one of my favorite things. Richie, do you know about this?
I know of it, but I don't remember who's in it.
It started out, they just had random people, right? It wasn't celebrity driven, right?
I actually never saw the live show, but I did see certainly. Look, the ones that I always loved were just civilians, just real old Jews telling jokes. But every once in a while, you'd get someone that was kind of notable who would jump in. I think Richard Kind did one, if I recall.
Oh yeah, you have to have Richard Kind.
And what? It's on video, or?
Well, it used to be on YouTube, but they took it down because it became a Broadway show.
Oh, really? But how is it a Broadway show? I mean,
I didn't see the show either, but they were telling.
You probably won't
Jewish
be able to see it
jokes.
till 2021.
Here, I'll give you one more. I got this one from Gilbert Gottfried, so you're really getting it from the source.
Buckle in.
Okay. So a man goes into a hotel in sort of the resort area in Florida. He's filling out the registration card, and a little old lady bent over comes over to him. And she kind of pokes at him, goes, Mister, who are you? I've never seen you here before. I know everybody. Who are you? He goes, well, there's a reason you ain't never seen me before. I just got out of prison. said, prison? Oh, my. So what was you doing in prison? He says, well, if you must know, 40 years ago, I took an axe and I chopped up my wife into 14 pieces and I buried her in 14 graves and I just got out of the joint. She looks at him for a second. She goes, oh, so you're single.
That's my favorite thing in
That's
the
great.
world, man.
That's
I love
great.
jokes.
You know, there's a part of
three
it.
jokes to choose from. You can pick any one of those you like.
I love it. Great. I don't know why you said he wasn't funny.
Thanks
At
a
the
lot,
end of
Timmy.
Yo, at the end of that joke, you gotta add. Oh, you should meet my daughter. Oh my god!
You know what? This whole day was worth it just to see Christian do a Jewish accent.
Yeah.
Oh, you should meet my daughter.
Oh god! So leave me alone, Richie.
It's Timmy.
So, Dan, you grew up LA
Born and raised in LA, yep.
and you grew up watching a lot of these old comedies.
Oh yeah,
What?
I mean, I'm still an insomniac. I was always been an insomniac. So I like to say KTLA Movies Till Dawn was my first film school. So my parents would put me to bed, and then when I was, fairly convinced that they were asleep, I'd go tiptoe out of my room. I'd turn on the TV. I'd sit this close to the TV, and I'd watch. If it was like, okay, there's 4 Marx Brothers movies, I'm in for the night. I'm going to watch all the Marx Brothers movies, 4 Danny Kaye movies, 4 Jerry Lewis movies, W.C. Fields. I love W.C. Fields, just all of that stuff. So, and then I started stealing my parents' comedy albums after that. This is all I have ever loved.
Could you remember the first one you heard? Like the first one that had like that impact on you?
The first comedy album?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So they had an album that was called, innocuously enough, The Comedians, and it was as generic looking as the title would imply. It was like a sampler platter, and there were 7 or 8 different comedians, just selected routines. So it was Lenny Bruce, Joan Rivers, Rodney Dangerfield, Buddy Hackett, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, Red Fox. I'm trying to think who else. But I mean, I remember every one of those routines. And the Lenny Bruce routine, I have to tell you, I don't even know how I could have appreciated how brilliant that was. But it was the Father Flotsky's Triumph routine, which is the prison break.
Yeah.
And I mean, keep in mind, I'm 7 years old, 7 years old when I stole this album. And it's got such, gorgeous, lines in it like, all right, Dutch, we'll meet all of your demands, except the vibrators. I don't know what I could have thought that meant.
Do you still have the record?
I do.
Do you really?
I have every comedy album I've ever. I have thousands of comedy albums.
Wow. Really?
I have thousands of comedy albums, and I would say hundreds of them that are signed.
Are you serious?
I've spent 40 years amassing as many signed comedy albums as you will ever find in any place ever. Let's put it this way. I am shocked. I've been married for 27 years. I don't know how that happened because
you had to meet her on the way to a signing or a purchase of an album in a store.
all I can tell you is all of the signed albums are on the 3rd floor of this house because when my husband and I first moved in together when we were first dating, this is out in LA, I remember her walking through, waving her hands across the walls with all my collectibles and posters and signed albums and everything that was all over all the walls. And she went, oh, this crap's gonna go.
So you're like, we need a bigger house because you can have the first 2 floors.
But you're not a comic yourself. As far you're more of a producer.
I was a comic for a while. Yeah,
You did do stand up.
I did during the comedy boom of the 80s.
The 80s. Yeah.
What? Oh, I'm sorry.
Were you out in LA only, or
Yeah, so I started in LA. I was at the store in the era when I was working with guys like Sam Kinison.
I was just gonna say Kinnison, I bet.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. Wow.
Now,
I've got some Kinison stories. I was at the record release party for his first album, Louder Than Hell, which I want to say was 85 or 86, maybe 86. And it was in the bungalow at the Chateau Marmont where John Belushi OD'd.
Oh wow, yeah. Wow.
That was a deliberate choice.
wow.
Was it really?
That was-
Yeah.
So, are you,
Snorting lines off of a hardcover copy of Bob Woodward's book Wired about the death of John Belushi, like rails this long going, "Come and get me, motherfucker!"
Wow.
I hope you got it signed that it's in your collection. Because
Wow.
we would send you up to the third floor to bring it down right now. That book.
The book or the cocaine?
both if he's got it?
Both.
Yeah, no, I don't. Some of that's not around anymore.
He's just getting over the hangover. So,
What got you into it? Like, what was your first step into comedy?
Well, like I say, because I was an insomniac, I think, well, first of all, it's just the endorphins of just laughing. And particularly my relationship with my dad was so much, bonding over comedy. So, whatever I saw him laughing at, I was like, what's that? So, I mean, like, I would sneak out of bed and he'd be up watching The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and I would watch the comedians with him, and so I saw all of those great comedians in the 70s. I don't know. I was completely fascinated by all of it. And then by the late 70s, I discovered the Dr. DeMento radio show. And that was like going through the looking glass. That was, absolutely like the portal to a whole new universe of amazing shit. And I wound up, I think really the first thing that I did to pursue this, other than just be a huge fan and a collector, was I made a record for the Dr. Demento show 40 years ago. Actually,
Wow.
40 years ago this year, I made my record for the Dr. Demento show.
wow.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So you started to get into stand up, but like how far along were you when you decided to maybe pull out a little? Because like
You mean stand-up?
yeah, from performing.
I got that.
Thanks so much, Billy.
You and Steve are right on track.
Well, I got into stand-up completely by accident. I was working as a summer intern at Paramount Pictures when I was 16. So this is the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work probably in television. That was really what I was excited about. And so I was interning at Paramount Pictures, and I started going to the comedy clubs with friends that I'd made in the casting department at Paramount. And I was just thrilled to be not only hanging out now in the comedy clubs, but, at the Melrose Improv, there was this legendary round table where if you were really in, Bud would let you sit there with him and all the big name comics. Well, the casting people from Paramount got to sit there. And since I was there with them, I got to sit there with them. So I got to meet all of these comics. And then because I knew all of their stuff, because I'd been watching them on Merv and Mike Douglas and, like I said, The Tonight Show, I would comment on their sets and I would go, "Oh, remember that joke? Oh, I had forgotten that joke. Thanks." Or I would offer them a line and they go, "Oh, can I do that?" And I'm like, "Sure, that would be awesome." And then a guy named Jimmy Brogan said to me, people pay for jokes. You could charge money for that. I was like, "Oh, that's good to know. Thanks." So I started writing jokes for a bunch of comics. And then eventually a lot of those comics would go, "Yeah, that joke doesn't sound right coming out of me. You should do that joke." And then comics would like say, "Why don't you get up? Come on, I'll get you up wherever." Or, "Hey, do you want to come out on the road with me? We can like write for a week and, you can be my opening act." And so that's really how it got started. There was no plan to be a comic, but it was just, like I say, it was the boom. There was so much opportunity. There was, there were so many clubs, there was so much stage time. And if you had 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you could work, 40, 50 weeks a year as an opener and then a middle. I got to the point where I like to say I was headlining the B rooms and middling the A rooms.
That's working the Bergs and Vills.
Yeah.
That's So when you were writing for and giving comics jokes, were there any jokes, and you don't have to tell us who or what the joke was, were there any jokes that just stuck with you and they went on in their careers and flourished and you go, oh, that was my bit?
Sure. I mean, tons of comics. I mean, some of the most memorable ones for me were the ones that the comics would do for their late night sets. The fact was, the reason comics were burning through so much material is there was so much opportunity for comics on TV, on late night and on basic cable and premium cable. I mean, comics were burning through more material than they had ever done before. Like most comics, they sort of put together a set and then they could sort of tour around with that set, and maybe they'd go on TV every once in a while, but they didn't burn through material at that same rate. And then by the mid 80s, when people were getting cable hours, well, then that material's all gone. Like, where's the next stuff going to come from? So guys like me who were writing jokes, were really in demand. So when Leno started guest hosting on The Tonight Show, I mean, Jay never really worked topical. He really had never done a lot of topical stuff. He maybe did some pop culture stuff about like commercials or whatever. But he was burning through a lot of topical stuff. So he had a bunch of guys that were feeding him stuff. And I remember one joke that I gave Jay was, this'll really date this. So do you remember when Michael Jackson was trying to buy the bones of the Elephant Man, John Merrick?
Yeah.
That was like a big thing. Like John Merrick, the remains of the Elephant Man, Michael Jackson was trying to buy his remains. And so the joke I wrote for Jay was that the Elephant Man's family had countered with a bid on Michael's original nose.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, that joke's really in a time capsule.
Yeah, but it's still funny.
Yeah, but it still plays. I feel like maybe because I'm older, but I remember that when that was.
That was such a big story. Yeah.
And now, how does it transfer from being a comic to going into, you produce? You're kind of like a comic historian. You seem to know more about comedy than the average industry person.
Yes, I have been. I've been called everything from comedy Rain Man to the Ken Burns of comedy.
I love. So I mean, obviously the love of this.
That was the buddy of it, Ken Burns.
The love of comedy is very apparent, but like I go to your website and I was checking out everything, and you're not afraid to talk about the roots of comedy. You're not afraid to talk.
No, in fact, I love it. I teach a TV development class at the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU, and one of the things that I like to talk to my students about is how did we get here? I feel like because there's so much content, there's so much media everywhere, it all seems so perishable, and everybody's on to what's next. I'm always excited about what's next, but I like to look at it in the context of like an evolutionary trajectory, right?
How did we get here?
So my first guest for my class this year 3 weeks ago was Norman Lear.
Wow. Oh my
That's
God.
sick.
Really?
And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal.
I'm really sorry you came on our podcast. You were just having a conversation with Norman Lear.
If I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, I was just talking to Norman Lear, now I'm hanging out with you.
Well, I'll tell you a story about Norman Lear. I do the warm-up for the Dr. Oz show, and Norman Lear was a guest.
Oh, really?
It's the only time that I ever asked. At that point, it's the only time I'd ever asked to take a picture with, because I never want to do that. I never want to get in the way. And And I said, I really want to get a picture with Norman Lear. And Dr. Oz goes, he never does this. You know what I mean? Like, and I have a great picture of Norman Lear. With, I'm like, it's
Of course. Well, I'll tell you guys. Last year I was at the Creative Arts Emmys when they actually could have the Emmy Awards in person.
Right.
And I took my kid out with me. So my daughter, who was then, she had just turned 12. It was just the two of us. We went out to California and we were at the governor's ball afterwards. And Norman had won the Emmy for, he and Kimmel did the live in front of a studio audience recreations of his classic shows. Mm-hmm. And he won the Emmy for it last year, becoming at that time the oldest Emmy recipient at age 97.
Wow. Holy.
And so I'm at the governor's ball and I'm trying to explain to my daughter who Norman is and how much he means to me. And she's like, oh my God, okay. And so we're there with Norman. And I said, can we please get a picture? And again, you don't want to do something like that at the governor's ball, but I'm with my kid and I feel like, when is she ever going to meet Norman Lear again? And Norman's daughter takes my iPhone to take the picture. And Norman reaches down and hands his Emmy to my kid and said, you should probably hold this.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And so I have this picture. It's me and Norman and my kid holding his Emmy, and I'm crying.
Wow.
God.
He was just, when I met him, he just was such a wonderful man. And like you, 97 years old and he's still going strong.
So he's 98 now. And this past week, he just won again for the second installment of Live in Front of a Studio Audience.
Really?
He became the oldest Emmy recipient again.
He beat him.
98.
First and second
He
place.
beat himself.
Your brother
Wow.
would be pissed, Tom.
Right?
This guy's the most competitive guy I've ever met in my
funny.
life. Him and his brother they compete about everything. That's how he became a professional
Kid,
gambler.
That's an absolutely
I have
amazing
to
story.
say, I feel like Norman Lear probably weighed in without me knowing who Norman Lear was on my psychological development as a child.
Oh,
Because
Without a doubt.
my mother said I used to have to fall asleep to All in the Family. Like I would have to.
wow.
So, and it's funny because I guess it almost created some of my thought process. I think even as a child, I was able to recognize the sarcasm and the play upon how ridiculous that was. And I think he did such a great job of conveying that to, even if you didn't know what it was, your subconscious got it. Like, this is so over the top bad that it's funny.
Right.
You know? So I was like, that really is a genius, like super genius. And I didn't know who he was then
Yeah.
until later on in life. But sick. So good. So good. Sorry.
But you started documenting a lot of this stuff, and you work for the TV Academy.
Well, so I've had a long relationship with the TV Academy. I became a member of the TV Academy as soon as I started my career working, as a development executive and as a producer. And really early on, the guy who really deserves the credit for this was, I think at that time, the head of Disney TV was a guy named Dean Valentine, who had this idea to start this project that was then called the Archive of American Television. The concept around the project was really kind of based on Spielberg's Shoah project, where Spielberg was going around the world trying to record interviews with every survivor of the Holocaust possible to document as many stories in the sort of first-person accounts as he could get. And Dean Valentine had this idea that a lot of the people who were there at the birth of television, at the very beginning of television, were still around, but they were dying quickly. And so Dean had this idea, and he happened to know that I was friends with Milton Berle. I actually met Milton when I was a comic.
Wow.
No way.
And so they wanted Milton, since he was television's first star, Mr. Television, to do an interview. So I, on behalf of this project, I wasn't involved yet, went to Milton and said, would you do one of these interviews? And he said, sure, if you do the interview. So, okay, why not? So I got to interview Milton, which was fabulous. I got to ask him everything I've ever wanted to ask him. And also I'd heard just from being friends with him, hours upon hours of stories just from sitting at the Friars Club listening to him tell stories. So I kind of knew where the gold was, but I got to ask him a lot of great stuff too. Anyway, the interview I think is like 5 hours long, and culminates with probably the question that most people would want to ask Milton in an interview.
I know what it is.
So the last question is, Milton, is it true?
That's all you have to say.
Do you know what he's talking about, Kahuna?
I do not.
Milton Berle was famous. The word was he had a huge dick.
Can I just tell you something? Again, hang on, let me just check. Honey, Abby's still not in the room, right? Okay. It was true.
Wow. Now,
So let me just tell you, I saw it.
What?
really?
Well, you need to take a double take, right?
Well, my joke is that the reason I saw it twice, it was so big you had to see it in installments.
And was it everything it was cracked up to be, or was it?
For the first time I saw it, Milton, I had
He was old and tired when he saw it, but it was still bigger than most.
I was over at Milton's. He had a condo in the Wilshire corridor, and I was over at his place early one morning. Milton was not a morning person, but he was sitting in a bathrobe, no underwear, knees like in 2 separate time zones.
Right.
And I walk in and just pinned it, like, there it is.
The monster.
And can I tell you something?
A shower, not a grower, is what you're telling us.
I mean, first of all, flaccid, it had 2 bends.
Wow.
The kneecap and an elbow.
Wow.
And I will just tell you, I actually swooned. I'm telling you, this is not an exaggeration. I went like this. I went, this is me looking at Milton, right? I go, so Milton, oh. The second time I saw it, I had to make sure. So I'm having lunch with him at the Friars Club. He's in the urinal next to me, in the men's room at the Friars Club. And I just kind of, the little peek. I had to make sure.
Yeah.
And Milton turns and he sees me looking over. He goes, "Is this what you wanted to see?" Reeled on me.
Oh my God.
I slip and fall because remember, this is the men's room at the
Out your
Friars
kneecap.
Club. So you've got to know that the men who are in there don't have the best aim in the world. So that floor is slick and wet. Huh?
The one in the basement downstairs? Is that
No. This is the Friars Club that used to be in Beverly Hills.
Oh, Beverly Hills. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I slip, I fall, I'm on the floor, and Milton, without zipping up or putting it away, reaches his hand out to help me up. And I'm like, you know what? Just put that monster away. I'll get up by myself.
Don't worry, there's a rope here that'll help me up.
Rapunzel.
Let down your cock.
So that's the
Wow.
stories of my verifying the legend of Milton Berle.
Because I heard him on Stern years ago, and Howard goes, "Come on, let me see it. Come on. And he show it. Just show me." And Milton Girls goes, "I'll tell you what. You take yours out, and I'll take out just enough to beat you."
Well, that's the classic story. That's a classic story of Milton and Forrest Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Forrest Tucker.
We're both supposed to have the
big-
most impressive
Yeah.
manhood in Hollywood, and so they were in, I think, the steam room at Hillcrest Country Club, and like tens of thousands of dollars are exchanging hands in the steam room, and these guys are sitting there like, "What's going on? Like, come on, we know about you.
Wow.
There's a lot of money on this, guys." So Forrest Tucker goes, "Sure, why not?" And he whips off this towel in like a grand flourish. And in what was, as Milton described it, a moment of stunned awe, penetrating the silence, one of Milton's writers, a guy named Jay Burton, said, "All right, Milton, just take out enough to win and let's get out of here."
Really?
Really?
That's
The writers. See, the writers are always funny.
And
They're always so much funnier.
But what I love is that Jay knew Milton was going to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Santa content. This is
yeah,
like Cobra
are you kidding
Kai.
me?
Obviously, if you're wielding that sword, you are going to. Your friends will know. No,
Yeah.
I feel like if he's seen it, there's probably a few other people he's been like, "That's what you're talking about right there, right?"
I'm not packing at all, and my friends know.
I would have been like, "What'd you bring a knife to a gunfight?"
That's something.
Well, real quick, let's play a clip from that awesome interview.
Yep.
And then this part gets
This
cut
will
out.
be where we play
Yeah.
a clip
Okay.
from the interview.
We don't have the clip.
You know, before
Well,
we
we
Go
have-
right to the clip where I say, Milton, is it true? And his answer is pretty funny. It's at the very end of the interview.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool.
Can you write that down for
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's at the very end. That'll be awesome.
Wow.
There's also, by the way, there's a great bit if you want to use it, at the very top of the interview with Milton and I with 2 cigars, and you can see me when I'm, I think, 26 years old in the clip. So it's the only 2 shot of me and Milton at the very top of the interview.
Yeah,
Let's
cool.
do-
That's so cool.
We'll do the 2 and the with the cigar, and then we'll do the
That's
story about the cigar.
Now we don't have to watch it.
See, like that's hilarious.
Oh, yay! That's
You just saved us a lot of work,
it's
Dan.
really funny, Kenny.
It never gets old.
No.
It never got old when Charles Grodin did it. It doesn't get old when Dan does it.
See, like that's super funny that he was that close with Milton Berle. That's so freaking cool because growing up, Milton Berle was in my favorite movie of all time. He was a cameo in the Muppet movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was. He was a used car salesman.
Yeah, and then he was on the Muppet Show because I grew up with those tapes, and that was my favorite fucking episode. He was the funniest dude that ever participated with him. He did a whole number with Fozzie. He did Top Banana with Fozzie, and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And my mom was like, "When you're older, we'll show you more Milton Berle." I was like,
Wow.
"Okay."
There was some about Milton
Your mom's
Berle.
very cool.
Yeah,
You
my
do
mom
have a
was
very
cool.
cool mom. And the other thing too, though, was I thought was interesting, and it makes me like have a flashback. Was Overton was on, and Overton talked about he made George Burns laugh when he was a little kid,
Yeah,
and he
that's
was
right.
by the pool. And I had these flashbacks, and I remember as a little kid, and it's funny you say this about Mel Brooks. As a little kid, I would watch them and go, I know they're funny. Some of the times they would say something that I didn't get. It went over my head.
Right,
But I go, but I know it's funny.
right.
Like, I just know because I had this like thing, the it factor. I
Yeah.
guess, of
Like,
the
You know,
time.
Pops.
Dan, you were talking about staying up late and watching the movies.
Mhm.
That's kind of gone in this day and age. Like
I
it's
feel bad for
And
kids
I feel-
growing
No,
up
I don't know
now.
because you could go down a rabbit hole now that we never could as kids.
I mean, they can find it, but
Yeah,
but I'm saying TV presented it to you.
yeah,
Like a kid's not going to go, let me look up the Marx Brothers.
yeah, but you
A
know,
know what
kid
I'm
has
saying?
to find out about it to go
look it up. Whereas TV would just bring it to you. I mean, God, every week.
That's a big part of what I do with all of my sort of obsessive comedy disorder projects, which is someone now needs to
push your
curate these things and be a recommendation engine, because the recommendation engine, as you rightly identify, was what was on. Why did we watch I Love Lucy or The Honeymooners or the Dick Van Dyke Show? Apart from the fact that they were great, it's also because that was what was on.
That was on.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
but do you think greater talent will be recognized now that there's so much more exposure to a multitude of talent that people that might never have had? Like, I'm so interested in learning how you had your opportunities, right? Because I've had a very weird life that I've been around a lot of celebrities. So, but I don't engage the same for some reason with certain celebrities that I do with regular people here and there. Yeah, some we just take to them with friends, right? Other people, it's almost like a weird dynamic, right? And that's what I find interesting when my friends I have a very good friend who's always in a celebrity circle. I've never been on a private jet. This kid's been on a million private jets with people, right? All the time. I don't know how he does it. So, but he's just always in an entourage. So now he's always like, why are you talking to them like that? Talk to them like you talk to everybody else. Everybody's always so drawn to you. He's like, just engage. And I remember I've been led into conversations with people not on the same path. So I'm in a circle, but I don't know if I feel specifically like I don't know how to breach a circle. And that's what I have a question for you. I'm like, how did you first start like engaging in these circles? right? Because from an outsider perspective, non-comedy, non-celebrity, non-this, non-that, you brought yourself, like, you're friends with legends, like legendary legends, who other true legends are, like Richie never took a picture with somebody. He wants to take a picture with Norman Lear.
Right.
You had the ability to be friends with Norman Lear, you know, or engage him on a different level. How did that occur? Like, how was that?
Well, look, I was very lucky. I like to say I had geography on my side because I was born and raised in LA.
Yeah.
So, you know, the fact is that it didn't seem that inaccessible. First of all, I went to school. Most of the kids I went to school with were the children of
celebrities,
all the famous people of that era. So my classmates in school were Bob Newhart's kids, Carol Burnett's daughters, Joan Rivers' daughter, Melissa, when she was Melissa Rosenberg, was, you know, we were on the swim team together.
So you're basically saying it was impossible to get in on the talent show.
It was a birth lottery.
Yeah, really.
So, you know, when I was a kid, you know, my dad was a CPA and my mom was, you know, in retail, but their jobs seemed as normal as my friends' parents' jobs. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but also, I was really interested in this stuff. So, you know, the Dr. DeMento show was on KMET in Los Angeles, and I could go to Tower Records and attend when Dr. DeMento was doing a live broadcast and meet everybody. And because I knew so much about this stuff, because I was just consuming it and studying it and trying to figure it all out, it wasn't that hard to put yourself in a circumstance where if you want to pursue it, it's right there. You know, like I played Little League baseball in the park across the street from 20th Century Fox studio, you know, on Pico in LA, because that was by my house. You know what I mean? So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I hit a ball so hard one time, knocked off Ted Danson's toupee.
I was going to say Tom Selleck. It's Tom Selleck right in that.
A joke would have been good, Mark, except Cheers was at Paramount, which was in Hollywood, and I was at 20th Century.
Come on.
All right. He fact checked me, all right?
Yeah, sorry.
That joke. I trumped it. I just made it up.
Oh man!
So you're interviewing these people, like you're
Hang on,
saying,
my
like,
phone is going crazy. I have a feeling it's Provenza. Can I get
StreamYard sucks.
So not only does he not come on, but then he interrupts the show, Provenza. This is what we're dealing with now.
This is awesome.
I love that he even has like a squeaky clown horn.
Right?
By the way, it's not Provenza. It's somebody else. I set up a friend of mine to interview Mel Brooks, so he's now excited because he just interviewed Mel Brooks, and he wants to tell me all about it.
Favorite, like Mel Brooks,
Jesus,
was another one
Dan,
I grew up on.
Are you kidding?
That I was like, the History of the World, another one. Like
When one night I was in a bar one night. I was in a bar one night, and we got into this discussion about the greatest movie ever made, and someone said Godfather, and who said, you know, whatever else, and blah blah blah. And when they got to me, I said Blazing Saddles, and they thought I was kidding. I go, no, think about what he did in that movie. Yeah. Think about what he got away with. Think about what what the statements he made, and think about how goddamn funny that movie is. There's not a moment in that movie that isn't just completely hysterically funny.
It's
just
joke
incredible.
after joke.
It's just nonstop. Yeah,
it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
But then let me ask you guys, because all three of you are in on this and see it from a bigger picture. Does cancel culture like stifle that the beauty of somebody like Mel Brooks or Norman Lear or somebody that's showing you what it is by the ridiculousness of what society is, right? And almost, I feel like that was more of a proponent to change society in a better path than this cancel culture is that's shutting down, like, he said this, she said that, don't say this, don't say that.
Can I tell you something? Here's something you probably wouldn't even remember. Norman Lear had a hard time getting All in the Family on television in the first place. Mm-hmm. He had to pilot it 3 times. He did 2 pilots for ABC before the 3rd pilot got picked up by CBS because the network was nervous about the show. And when the show aired, they had to put a warning in front of the show for the first few episodes to say this show is going to use words and language and express ideas that may make some viewers uncomfortable, and you may not want to, watch this with your children. And I talked to Norman about that with my class.
Wow.
See, I
want to take your class.
I was gonna say now I got to go back to school.
I really want to take your class.
That's what I'm going to blame radio gods on. I'm going to say just keep taking it out. I'm trying to keep taking it out to try to get it to work. So you're cataloging this stuff with the TV Academy, and then you start getting into producing.
Well, yeah, that was this work with the TV Academy was sort of at the same time as I started my career as a development executive and a producer, because I've been doing that for more than 25 years.
So you're doing both, but what got you into starting to produce and develop and do all that stuff?
It was really what I wanted to do. I mean, look, being around stand-up and doing stand-up and writing for comics, I mean, look, that was all stuff I always loved.
Yeah.
But since I was a kid, I was a make stuff person. I started making, little movies when I was, 13, 14 years old. So I knew I wanted to be a producer. I was just trying to figure it out. It's interesting how the two kind of fed each other. So the first time I ever met a television executive, I was writing jokes on a Bob Hope special.
Wow.
I was 16 years old. I was writing jokes on a Bob Hope special, and I met this guy, Brandon Tartikoff, who at the time was the president of NBC.
Don't know who he is.
Well, the people at home might not know who he is. So let's.
I was joking.
No,
9
I
out
know
of
that.
10 though, but have to. I think I'm not.
I didn't know who he was. The important thing is, at that time, the president of NBC, I think he was 31 at the time, by the way.
Yes.
And I had no idea who he was. So I was like, what does it mean to be the president of a network? I don't even know what that job is. I didn't really understand it. I was 16. I was just there writing jokes. And he said, my job is to find the most talented people and give them the most hospitable environment to do their best work. And I thought,
wow.
Yeah, I'm going to remember that. That's going
to talk to comedy club owners.
Oh my God. Yeah, really. My God. Sit over there. He is the man who developed.
I knew what I want. I mean, I went to film school when I was, right out of high school. And that was always what I was sort of pointing myself towards. So by the time I got my first development job, that was always kind of the plan,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to just bring this directly back to me, but I feel like, Dan, you are living the Mark Riccadonna dream. If I grew up in
the
LA.
Mark Riccadonna dream, the Big Kahuna dream as well. Jesus, that is awesome.
You guys need to dream bigger.
I love it. I love it.
Nah, you're wrong.
You don't understand how I'm so excited about what you're just telling these stories and talking about.
For me, it was Milton Berle lived my dream.
Having that huge wedding.
I wish I had
I'm
that.
good on that front. So Milton.
Why do you think they call him the Big Kahuna?
So I guess where I want to go with this right now is, so you have this amazing history appreciation, which is awesome, but you're also part of everything that's in the culture now as far as comedy. I mean, looking at what you've been involved in, stuff like Maria Bamford's stuff and Portlandia, so when you're taking on a project, what compels you to the project? What's your first thing you look at, and then how do you continue to find interest in whatever the project is?
Well, the thing is, if you have an appreciation for what has historically been great, hopefully you will have a sense of, again, where things fit in this ongoing evolution of the form of stand-up, the form of film, the form of television. And, I'm always thinking about what's next, what's new, what's exciting. I mean, I love to be a preservationist for the things that I love that inspired me, but then I'm fortunate also to work with people who are similarly inspired, and you have a kind of common core group of references. You have a kind of common language and things that you're drawing upon. So when you're talking to, the people who are developing a show like Portlandia, and you're talking about SCTV and the Kids in the Hall and the shows that kind of led up to Portlandia, you can really speak in, a kind of shorthand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an appreciation and a shorthand for it.
I mean, the fact, one of the great joys of my life was getting to introduce Maria Bamford to Jonathan Winters, because I saw so much of Jonathan in what Maria did in terms of like the absolute integrity and the kind of character work that she does. And so being able to introduce Maria to Jonathan, it's just one of the great joys of my life.
That's
very cool.
Right.
And she's a genius in every sense of the word, in the same ways that John was.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's odd, and like we were talking about earlier, that it's this generation doesn't have things put on their laps, so they have to actually go out and research it. How do you feel about the younger?
I'm gonna retort to that in that I feel like this generation idolizes certain people, but when you hear those people, because me personally, like if you would, and I'm still older, I'm not this generation, but when you,
how old are you?
I'm 42, so I feel like
you're a baby.
I know.
You're adorable.
But if you're like,
I got ties older than you.
I know. But if you go out there and you start looking into your comic, I believe a lot of the young comics have had the influence of they'll mention this person influenced me. Then you start delving into that person, and they say this person mentioned.
But I think it's
me.
I think, and I wanted to do a podcast with Jim Mendrinos about this, but I think it's the comic's responsibility to talk about the history of what it is. Like, who was the comic that, Richie, who's the comic in your eyes, and they don't have to be famous, who's the comic that inspired you to continue? Whether it's somebody who did something nice for you, or somebody one night you were down and out and you saw them on TV, and
Joey Cola.
So Joey Cola. Now,
if we're not, from the sense of when I opened for him back in 1991, and I was like, look at what he just did to this crowd. Like, it was like, and I went, my God, if I could even come close to that, you know what I mean? And and that was like, wow,
So there should be a thing or a show or a something. And I wanted to do a podcast, but it's like, who's going to listen? But like, you talk about Joey Cola. So your fans then will look in the Joey Cola, but then we could talk to Joey Cola. And who are the people that influenced you?
Right. Can I tell you something, Mark? The interesting thing is, so the next project that I'm working on for SiriusXM, because I do these OCD projects. So OCD is what I'm self-diagnosed with. It is my own disease. It is obsessive comedy disorder. And so it's an audio documentary series, a multi-episode, multi-hour series about the comedy boom of the 80s. And the first episode is just talking to the stars of the comedy boom of the 80s about who inspired them.
Wow. Awesome.
So that's the first episode.
Interesting.
You sent me the clip from the Grammys.
So yeah, I did the last special I did for Sirius was I did the 60-year history of the Comedy Grammy Award, and going through how the recording industry has changed, how comedy has changed, and how the award itself has evolved over those 60 years. And there's great stories in there from, Bob Newhart talking about the making of his first album, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, which won the Grammy for Album of the Year, not just the Comedy Grammy, Album of the Year.
Really? No, I never knew that.
Right?
One of only 2 comedy albums that ever won the big prize at the Grammys. And the interesting thing about that album, Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, when he went to record that album, he'd never been on a nightclub stage before, ever.
Holy shit.
That's so
weird.
weird.
Like Kevin Bacon tie-in, Missy Grinkowitz.
Yeah, we just had a guest on, Missy Grankowitz, who She made an album, and
Her third time on stage.
and
had
it got
no idea.
nominated for a Grammy.
It got nominated.
Yeah,
It
didn't win.
make it, but
And it was only her like
it was
third
her
time.
third time on
Yeah.
stage.
So you're saying there's hope for me?
No, there's no hope for you. There's no hope for you.
But anyway, so the Grammy special was the first of these OCD specials that I did for SiriusXM.
What was the other?
Real fast. We're gonna play a clip from it.
Okay, sorry.
We have a clip.
There we go.
And then I'll put it here because I'm not.
And this is where we put the clip in. Okay, continue talking.
What was the other comedy album that won Grammy of the year? You said
We should
The
guess
First
them.
Family.
say what?
The First Family.
Oh, The
Meter.
First Family. Okay.
The Vaughn Meter album, the
Yeah,
JFK
Vaughn Meter,
family.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. That makes sense.
Richie, you could have taken money off of me there because I didn't know that.
Yeah, that
You
makes
You should have
sense.
made me
I
bet on that.
probably.
Taking $20.
So
Well, I will tell you this: talking about young comics or young people not knowing, like, because we had a thrust upon us as far as the honeymooners at 5:00 at night.
and
I am blown away at how many comedians that I meet who are in their 20s who go,
don't know.
who
The
go,
legends.
you knew Bill Hicks?
Oh.
Like, that's amazing. I don't know what it is.
I knew Hicks.
I knew Hicks too, but I can't get over how
Where'd you know Hicks? Did you know him?
from just opened from here in New York a few times, and I wasn't best friends or anything. I liked him a lot, and
I have a great Bill Hicks story. If you
so
want.
do I. Go ahead, but you go ahead. You go ahead.
You go first.
You go
Yes.
first. Yeah.
Okay. So I met Hicks when he was out in LA, and he was miserable in LA. He would come and hang around the Comedy Store. And again, at that time, Kinnison was kind of the big swinging dick at the store. And he and Sam had some kind of falling out. It's not my story to tell. I mean, I kind of know some of the details of it. But let's just say that Sam exerted a certain amount of influence and Hicks was not getting a lot of stage time. So we were hanging out a lot and partying a lot. And I was talking about all these old comedy albums, and I was telling him about, I think it was Murray Roman. There's a guy for you cats to look up. The comic named Murray Roman was Tommy Smothers' favorite comedian and Keith Moon's favorite comedian. Okay? And so this guy, Murray Roman, had an album called You Can't Beat People Up and Have Them Say I Love You. And it's a really interesting album because it's a live stand-up album and it's mixed with this kind of psychedelic rock of the era. So it's a real sort of like audio collage pastiche kind of comedy album. So that album and another one called A Blind Man's Movie are these really experimental kind of comedy albums in terms of the presentation of the form. So Hicks and I were up all night partying, doing a lot of drugs and listening to these albums over and over and over. And he was at my house. Now I'm 17 at this point. I think Hicks was 7 years older than me. So maybe he's 24, something like that. And we were just up all night. And this is when I was living with my parents. So the next morning, my mom makes us breakfast, and Bill, being a good Southern boy, was like, thank you, ma'am. This is wonderful, ma'am. I really appreciate your hospitality. Very courtly, very gentle. He was very sweet, actually, that way. And so when he left, it was just so funny because I am just like wasted. I've been up all night. I've been partying. And the only thing I remember my mom saying is, that Bill Hicks seems like such a nice young man.
I so badly wanted this podcast to be recorded at my parents' basement in Ohio because my parents have had more celebrity comics, not big celebrities like not celebrities like
Mel Brooks and Norman Lear,
not
but yes.
like headliner comics have more comics have stayed at my parents' house. And even with me not being there as their opening act, they're passing through the Midwest and I go, just stop by my parents' house. They'll cook you dinner and you can have a home cooked meal. And like these great comics would stop in at my parents' house have dinner, and then next thing you know, like, do you want something to drink? My brothers, hey, there's a comic here. Hold on, here's 2 cases of beer. And they'd hang out, and then they'd be like, just stay in the guest room, just hang out. And it's like, my parents love comedians so much, and you hear all the nightmare stories of comics. My mom and dad have nothing but and they're just sweet guys, and they love a good home cooked meal, and they're good people. And it's like you get a little hometown feel, like you get your mom gave Bill, and your parents love it because
I know, but he was up all night doing coke and listening to this. It's so funny.
Yeah, but they don't know that part.
No, my parents had no idea.
You want me to? He was
all right. So Jeffy, tell your story now.
He was at Caroline's one night, and someone offered me tickets. I went to see him, and it was a Sunday night. There were only like 20 people in the room. He even got on stage and went, "I've had more people in my bed." And he's doing his act, and it wasn't like a Bill Hicks crowd or anything. And I mean, he was really spewing. I mean, he was really letting go. Yeah. And it's before I had just started in comedy, so I didn't know that much. And I remember being like, this guy is fucked up, man, right? And he's doing Geraldo Rivera giving birth on he's doing all kinds of fucked up shit. And they had announced that he'd been on David Letterman's show. And halfway through the show, he goes, "I'm bored. Just who's got questions?" Which I always think about now when I'm like, what a cool thing that was, because you don't know where that can go. It's great for him. It's great for you as a performer. It's great for the audience.
The audience are going, "Oh my God, he just made this up."
People start asking him questions. And I raised my hand, and he goes, "Yeah." And I go, they said you were on Letterman. And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, we just watched a half hour of your act. What 5 minutes did you get out of that could go on Letterman?" And he started laughing. 2 years later, I opened for him at Jimmy's Comedy Alley in Queens. And I tell him that story, and he remembered it. And it was,
that's awesome.
And we worked together like 4 or 5 times after that. And he always thought that was really funny. That, like, he said, "I remember that question. That was a good question."
That's
so he goes, "I was particularly vile that night."
He was such a good guy, but if he liked you, it felt like a great compliment because he was also a real comedy snob.
Yes, he was. And he told me he didn't like my act, but he liked me. That's funny that you say that.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I have my last memory of seeing him. So I was playing a club in Houston called Spellbinders.
I played Spellbinders. It's a great club.
Yeah, the Ice House used to book that room.
Yeah.
The Ice House used to book that room. So I was in this place, and the guy I was working with, if I really thought about it, I could probably come up with his name. Actually, I just came up with his name. I'm not going to mention his name.
Don't say
it. But let's just say he was the kind of guy who did well playing certain rooms in the South.
Right.
That's all he did, and no one's ever heard of him. But he used to do like juggling, and he used to do a thing, like a pantomime thing to the theme from Rawhide. And he used to have like a lasso he would like whip around.
It's Tom Bannis's act.
No, I know
that's where I took it from.
I know who it is. Go ahead.
So I'm standing in the back of the room with Hicks. Hicks is not on the bill. He just happened to be in Houston at the same time. And so we were going to get together and go out and get something to eat after the show. And I remember just standing there watching this guy and then watching Bill. And watching this guy and watching Bill. And he only said one word, and he said it over and over and over. It was fantastic. This is Bill. He's just watching this guy, and he goes, "Jesus." And the inflection every time was different. It would be, "Jesus." And you go, "Jesus." Every time.
We did it, Bill. You're Christian.
And I bet the guy was killing, right?
Destroying.
Yeah.
Years later, Provenza and I wrote a character into a pilot that we wrote for Showtime that never got made. But we wrote in this character of the world's worst prop comic named Mr. Popularity. And
That's great.
My God.
And it was sort of based on this guy.
Please use that character
Oh
name
my
in something
God.
in the future. That's just incredible.
Well, we did a live reading of this pilot, and Kurt Braunohler played Mr. Popularity. He had a great cast for that. JB Smoove was in it. There was a bunch of there was a bunch of great people who were in that reading.
Interesting.
It's such a throughout the years though. Who were you most? Have you had an in awe moment where you just almost fumbled? No, but like where you fumbled talking, you couldn't understand. Like
Sure. Oh my God! Like probably the most memorable one for me was when I got to open for Carlin.
Wow!
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I get to do 2
That's
shows.
meeting them. You get to go up and tell comedy in front of.
Right, and I was nowhere near ready. But the guy who ran this club in L.A., Igby's, Jan Smith, knew how much I loved George, and so I did. A couple of shows opening for George Carlin. And listen, if I told you I did great, it would be a lie. If I told you I did terrible, I honestly don't remember the show. I probably did fine. The only thing I will tell you is that George was unbelievably gracious and gave me his phone number and kind of gave me this like soul bro handshake and said, "Hey man, we're brothers in arms. You call me anytime."
Wow. Yeah, I met him one night at Dangerfields, and he could not have been nicer to.
Unbelievably, and for years he was always so kind to me.
Yeah.
Did you do his?
But in awe, it doesn't even begin to describe how I felt being in George's presence.
Right.
Begin to like touch it.
Yeah.
Kahuna has a question for you.
Did you end up interviewing him for the Television Academy interview? Because I know he has one.
Yes. No, I did not do the interview with George for the TV Academy, unfortunately, although it's a very good interview.
And a good question, Kahuna.
Yeah. Which is one of your favorite interviews?
Wow.
Top 3.
There's a few.
Let's Kahuna, great idea. Top 3 or 5, so you don't have like
You're killing it, Kahuna.
The Sid Caesar interview is great because Sid he's kind of unknowable. I mean, the thing about Sid, and maybe you'll find this clip and you'll pull this up.
We will.
I asked Sid, because he did so many different characters and he had so many different dialects, but very rarely spoke as himself, very rarely spoke as Sid Caesar. And the thing that was very revealing to me was he said that was the hardest part of any show. He said, if I could be Professor Von Know-It-All or any of these characters he would do, he goes, no problem. He said, but the hardest part for him was to hit the mark and say, "I'm Sid Caesar. Welcome to your show." Sid.
Wow.
That part made him nervous.
Wow.
Well, let's show a clip of that right now.
Clip here.
Wow.
Clips here. Okay.
But Sid is, because I knew him at least well enough to, really like get into stuff with him and knew so much of his work. It's an interview I'm really proud of because I don't think Sid was ever as, I don't want to say revealed, but I don't think Sid was ever as comfortable in any other interview I saw. So I think that it's great because Sid's so great.
Mm-hmm.
The one with Jonathan Winters means a lot to me just because Jonathan was family to me. Jonathan, there are 3 funerals I've ever produced in my life: my mom, my dad, and Jonathan.
Wow.
And so, that's his art on the wall here in my dining room.
Oh
Those
my
are
God.
Yeah. Jonathan is in my house. Literally is in my house.
I had a connection to him as a little kid.
I don't know that I could, if I'd met him, that I could talk.
And by the way, when I say Jonathan is in my house, I mean literally Jonathan is in my house.
Or you have ashes.
The urn?
Are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
No way. That's crazy. No way.
We might have to go out when he shows us.
Yeah,
this.
I think we have to. Plus, we've been on for over an hour.
And now you can say Jonathan Little was on your podcast.
Wow.
Look at this.
Oh my God.
That's Jonathan Winters. After
God.
his memorial service, here, I'll give you a story to end on. You want a story to end on?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because we haven't told a
my
good one
God.
yet, Dan.
Okay.
Damn it.
So when Jonathan died, I was in Stockholm, Sweden, working on a show for IFC. And Robert Klein, who I introduced to Jonathan, called me to say he had died. And so immediately I was in touch with his daughter, and they said they were going to wait till I got back to plan the service. They set a date, making sure I could come out to California, and they reserved the Libero Theater in Santa Barbara. But beyond that, they didn't know what they wanted to do. So I said, well, you know what? I'll cut like a video. I made these videos of my parents for their services. I'll make one for Jonathan. It wound up being 42 minutes, so we cut it into 4 10-minute hunks, and we showed it throughout the service. But they didn't know what else they wanted to do, so his daughter said, why don't you come out early and you'll help me plan it? And I literally, in like 3 days, put the whole thing together, figured out who all the guest speakers would be. I slept in Jonathan's bed in his house by myself. His daughter was at her house, so I'm in Jonathan's bed in his house by myself. And we decided that we would put like a tableau on stage. Jonathan collected toys. He had this hat rack that were full of hats that he would put on when he played all the different characters. So we kind of created this sense of him. We had his chair that he used to sit in with an ashtray with the last third of the last cigar he ever smoked still in the ashtray. And then on the table, his Hopalong Cassidy lunchbox. The morning of the service, his daughter says, you're going to MC the service. I hadn't planned on being the host of it, so I wrote something very quickly. And I'm taking a shower, and I hear a voice. I'm in his shower, in his bathroom. Now, I know you're going to think I'm bullshitting or I'm crazy.
No, not at all.
I'm telling you that as clear as he was standing in the room, his voice literally bouncing off the tile, I heard Jonathan's voice. I race downstairs. My hair's still wet. I race downstairs and I tell Lucinda, his daughter, what I heard. Her eyes got wide like this. And it was him giving me instructions of what he wanted me to do in the service. She said, we're doing it. I go on stage. I introduce all the guest speakers, and Richard Lewis is there, and Bonnie Hunt, and Robert Klein, and all these wonderful people who, Frank Sinatra Jr., like people who knew Jonathan for years and years and years. And by the time I get to the end of the service, it's about 2 hours. And it really felt like a show. I mean, there were a lot of laughs. Like I say, there was 40 minutes worth of material of John performing. By the time we get to the end of the service, I say to the crowd, I go, I think this has been a great show, and it should have been a show. John would have wanted it to be a show. But there's one performer I think we all would agree we wished had been on the stage with us. I go over, I grab the Hopalong Cassidy lunchbox, and I hold it up, and I go, guess what? He was on stage the whole time. We put his ashes in the lunchbox, and that's what John said to me. John said, put me in the lunchbox. That's what I heard him say.
Oh my God.
The whole crowd was like, oh.
Oh my God.
And
So
went, Jesus.
So afterwards, we're back at the house. I'm just drained. I'm exhausted. And John's daughter, Lucinda, goes like this. I go into the kitchen. She's got the lunchbox open, and there's this baggie full of John's ashes. And she says, do you want to take some of Daddy home with you?
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
So this is surreal. I was on, because I'd been traveling, I was on antibiotics. So I take the last amoxicillin pills out of this pill bottle, and she takes a tablespoon out of the silverware drawer, and two big scoops of John goes in my little pill bottle, and they fly home with me to New Jersey, which was hilarious because my friend Wayne Fetterman, who's a comic you guys might know, was on the plane, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm flying back. I was out in California for Jonathan Winters' service. I said, in fact, John's on the plane. He's like, what? And I had to explain. I said, Jonathan's on the plane.
There he is.
So So when Lucinda gave me the ashes, she said, "Now don't snort any of Daddy trying to get funnier."
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Punchline on top of punchline. So my wife said, "You can't leave Jonathan Winters in a pill bottle." So she bought me this little urn to put Jonathan's remains. I'm transferring him from the pill bottle to this little urn. And I got some of them on my finger. So I snorted them.
That's Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on YouTube or wherever you podcast. We also would appreciate spreading the word. Let anyone who may enjoy us know about us. We appreciate the plug. Special thanks to A Shared Universe Studios, Realize Records, and Why Not for the great music.